Tonight, I want you to turn with me to the most familiar passage in all the Bible. It's only 25 words, and someone has called it the gospel in a nutshell, and you know where it is. Night after night, I've asked you to bring your Bible. Every night. I'm not here giving a lecture on psychology or philosophy or politics. I'm here giving you the message of God from this inspired book. This book that we believe is God's Word to men today. And so I'm asking that you turn to this book. Almost everybody has a Bible. You have a Bible in your home. We have Bibles in our hotel rooms. Almost everybody in America owns a Bible or has a Bible available. But very few people are reading the Bible. Very few people know what the Bible says. Very few people know the real teaching of the Bible. And we have so many false conceptions and false ideas of God. So tonight I want you to turn to this ancient book, the Word of the living God, to our hearts tonight. John, the 3rd chapter, the Gospel according to John, the 3rd chapter, and the 16th verse. And here we have it. For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I want to read it again. For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. During the past few years, we have seen a mounting tension throughout the world. Our newspapers here in New York have been carrying stories of sordid crime and murder in the last few days. Many people are asking, why these murders? Why is crime on the increase? Why are our divorce courts filled? Why all of these tensions and problems in the world today? Is there no answer? Is there no solution? We're seeing today a rising racial tension throughout the world. Many people are asking, what's going to be the end of it? Are we going to have a bloody revolution in this country and a racial war throughout the world? What's the end of it? What's the cause of it? We've seen a riot on Formosa in the last few days. We're seeing today brutality in Algeria, such as the world has rarely seen. We've seen brutality in Hungary. And we all live under the shadow of the H-bomb that could destroy a city like New York in the space of a few seconds. And we're asking ourselves, what is the cause of it all? Do men have to always fight and cheat and hate and lie and steal? Do they always have to have intolerance and hatred and prejudice for each other? Does man always have to fight it out in every generation? What's the cause of it? Other people are asking that are lying on hospital beds tonight, what's the cause of suffering? What's the cause of sickness? Why do all of these things come? You have your own personal problems. There is not a person in this room tonight that doesn't have personal problems, personal dilemmas, personal bewilderments and problems that baffle you. And then when we think of life, we wonder where we came from, why we're here, where we're going. We wonder what the whole answer is to this mystery of life. It seems that when we're in the very peak of life, we die and we're carried to the grave, and our life is over and we're forgotten and it's all over. What's the use of it all? Many people are asking. They're beginning to ask, why did God create man anyway? Man that has made such a hell in certain areas of his life and seemingly getting ready to destroy himself unless some miracle takes place to stop this mad arms race that we're in. What's the end of it all? Why all the suffering? Why did 2 millions of people go to bed hungry every night? Millions of people go to bed hungry every night in India and other parts of the world. Why the suffering in the world? I want to answer some of those questions tonight. And I want us to go back to the very beginning. For God. For God. All right, if there is a God tonight and we say that he's a God of love, and this God that we all worship and believe in, this God is a God of love and mercy and long-suffering, why doesn't he stop all this suffering? Why doesn't he end it all? Why doesn't he just kill the devil if there's a devil and stop it all? All right, I'm going to answer that tonight. Not my own answer, but the biblical answer. What does the Bible say about it? First of all, the Bible tells us about God. The Bible tells us that God is the God of creation. He made the mountains. He dug the valleys. He made the stars and the moon and the sun. He is the great God of creation. He created you. The Bible also tells us that God is a spirit. Now, God doesn't have a body like you and I have. God is a spirit. He is not bound, nor is he limited by a body. If God had a body, God could not be everywhere at the same time. But God can be everywhere at the same time because he does not have a body. God is a spirit. And then the Bible teaches that God is an unchanging God. We have an idea that God is changed. We have an idea that in this modern generation that God is changed to accommodate himself to us. But that's not true. The Bible teaches there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning with God. The Bible tells us that God has not changed in the slightest. And the same God that hated cheating and lying and stealing 2,000 years ago, or 4,000 years ago when he gave the law to Moses, has not changed. He is an unchanging, everlasting God. The Bible teaches that he's from everlasting to everlasting, that he never had a beginning, that he never has an end, and that he absolutely is changeless. We think that Americans are pets of God, but I want to disillusion you. The Bible says that God is no respecter of persons. He is an impartial God. You may be a rich man. You may be an important man in your community. But in God's sight, you're like every other man. You may have white skin or dark skin. It makes no difference. God does not look on the outward appearance. The Bible says he looks upon the heart. And all of us are the same in the sight of God. The Bible teaches that God is also a righteous God. He is a holy God. He is a pure God. He is absolute righteousness and absolute holiness. His purity is such that no sin can stand in his presence. The Bible says that his eyes are too pure to look upon sin. That is the reason that any sinner cannot stand, and no sinner can stand in the presence of Almighty God. He is so pure, he is so righteous, he is so holy that no sinner can stand in his presence. That's the reason that all sin is banished from his presence. All impurity is banished from his presence. Then the Bible teaches that he is a God of judgment. And as sure as I stand here on this platform tonight, as surely as you sit in your seat tonight, God is someday going to judge the world. And every man outside of Jesus Christ shall stand before him. And one day, the Bible says that every one of us shall stand in the presence of a holy God to give an account of what we've done with Christ, to give an account of how we put in our days and our hours and our minutes in the probation period that he gave us. God shall judge the world, and there are going to be many people in that day that will come to him and say, "But Lord, we cast out demons in your name. Lord, we did many wonderful works in your name." But he's going to say, "Depart from me, ye cursed, I never knew you. You never repented of sin. You never received my Son Christ. You never had an encounter with me. You were too busy while you were down there to have any time for me. You never spent time in prayer. You never spent any time reading my word and my message to you. You had very little time for the church. You had no time for me, and I have no time for you now. Depart from me, ye cursed, I never knew you." Ladies and gentlemen, God, a holy, righteous God, shall judge sin. And the Bible says the wages of sin is death. The Bible says the soul that sinneth shall die, and that death spoken of there is banishment from the presence of God. But God is something else. And I'm glad that this last point can be made tonight, because the Bible teaches that God is a God of love and mercy, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. The Bible teaches us, but God commended his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And that's the very reason why God created the human race in the first place. God created the human race in the beginning because he is a God of love. He loves, and love has to have an object. And so God created another intelligent being in the world. And that other intelligence was man. Now, God didn't create us a piece of machinery that he could push a button and we would jump and obey. He didn't do that at all. God created us with a will of our own. Now, God gave to you a gift that he didn't give to any of his other creatures. He gave it to you. It's a gift of free will. You can choose to serve God if you want to. You can choose to live your own life if you want to. Now, the Bible teaches that. And so when God created Adam and Eve, he gave to them wills of their own. And God wanted us to serve him and love him because we chose to do it, because we wanted to, not because we had to, not because he pushed a button and made us do it. He created us so that we could return his love. He loves you. He wants you to choose to love him. And so God created us in order to return his love. And he gave us a paradise to live in. And man and God walked together in the Garden of Eden. They were friends. They talked together. I imagine they talked about atomic energy. I imagine they talked about all the wonderful things that could be built and the wonderful world that they were going to build together, God and man. But in order for man to choose, he had to have something to choose. And so God gave him a test. God put a tree in the garden. And God said, Adam, you can have all the fruit in this garden, all the vegetables in this garden, but this one tree. If you eat of this tree, you will be saying to me, I don't need you, God. I disobey you, God. I'm going to build my own life and my own world without you. And so God stood back, as it were, to see what man, this intelligent creature, this creature with a will of his own, who could have intimate fellowship and friendship with God, what he would do. Because God wanted him to return his love and wanted his obedience because he chose to do it. So man stood at that moment of temptation, and the Bible and the whole world tonight knows what happened. Man failed. Man decided to go his own way. Man decided to live his own life. Man decided to try to build his world without God. And so he deliberately broke the moral law of God. He broke the commandment of God. And the Bible says that breaking the moral law is sin. That's one of the root meanings of the word sin. Sin is a transgression of the law. And the Bible says that every son and daughter of Adam since then has broken the moral law of God. Now, it's true that you tonight are a lawbreaker by inheritance. You are a sinner by inheritance. You have come short of the glory of God. But God doesn't hold you accountable only because of Adam's sin. Don't blame it on Adam. Because when every one of us reaches the age of accountability, when you reach the age that you know the difference between right and wrong, all of us at some time has deliberately sinned against God. We have deliberately broken the moral law. Now God had said to Adam in the Garden of Eden, in the day that thou eatest, thou shalt die. In the day that you break my law, you shall die. What kind of death? Physical death, to be sure, but spiritual death and eternal death. Now, there are three deaths spoken of in the Bible. Physical death. When a man dies, his body goes to the grave. But the Bible teaches that you have a soul. You have a spirit. And the Bible says that that spirit, that soul of yours, shall live on forever and ever. And spiritual death means that we're separated from God in this life by sin, but when we die, there is eternal death in which we're banished from the presence of God. Three kinds of death spoken of in the Bible. Now, Adam sinned. Adam and Eve sinned. that immediately raised a barrier between God and man, a wall, a chasm, a barrier between God and man. Man said, I don't need you, God. I can build my own life the way I want to. I don't have to have you. And so the wall was built between God and man. And every man, the millions of men and women over the face of the earth today in all generations, have broken God's law. We've broken the Ten Commandments. We've failed to keep the Sermon on the Mount. We've come short of the glory of God. Now, to be sure, a man may be a good, clean, respectable, moral man. He may look good on the outside. I can take a diamond. I can look at it with my untrained eye, and it looks perfect. I take it to a jeweler, and he says, no, it's not perfect. It has imperfections in it. He puts on his glass, and he looks, and then he asks me to take a look. It still looks perfect to me. I've tried it. But to the trained eye of a jeweler, it comes short of being a perfect diamond. That's exactly what sin is. You may be a perfect gentleman or a perfect lady. You may be clean and moral and respectable, but we are morally imperfect. Every one of us has a moral disease. That moral disease is called sin. And sin has built a wall between man and God, a barrier, a chasm between man and God. Well, what can we do about it? What can we do to get back in fellowship with God? What can we do to have God? Because all of our troubles and all of our problems in the world come from the fact that we're separated from God. You see, you have a soul. And that soul of yours was made for God. And as St. Augustine said long ago, it's restless until it finds its rest in God. And that's the reason that you can find a person who has reached the top of success, and he's miserable and hungry down inside. I've talked to wealthy men that had $1 million, and they've confessed to me outside of Christ that there is a misery and an emptiness down inside. Their money hasn't made them happy and hasn't brought joy. Now, the Bible distinguishes between fun and joy. You can have fun. You can have pleasure and live any kind of a life you want, but you can't have joy. That inward joy and peace and happiness that Christ brings. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Why? Because we're separated from God. And the soul, that person that lives in you, now what I see there is only your body. But down inside of you, the real you, your personality, your memory, your intelligence is your soul, your spirit, which lives forever and ever. Now you can satisfy your body temporarily. Your body has hunger and thirst and all the rest. You can satisfy it temporarily. But your soul, made in the image of God, also craves satisfaction. It also craves joy and peace and happiness. And many times your soul cries out for peace, and you misunderstand it. And so you go out and get drunk, and you think you'll forget reality. Or you may take a few tranquilizing pills with a lot of aspirin thrown in between. Or you'll try yourself at a continual amusement. Some people have to be amused, and they have to have some sort of entertainment all the time to try to keep their spirits up, to try to escape reality. We're all trying to escape today. I want to tell you tonight that there is a way back to God. And all of our troubles in the world come from the fact that men are sinners. I can take you down to Ecuador, the Auca Indians. I can study their society, and I see hating and lying and cheating and killing. I can come to New York, where we are thousands of years advanced culturally and socially over the Auca Indians, and I find lying and hating and cheating. I find misery in the human heart, just as I find there. So that having money in our pockets and economic prosperity and educational advantages are not all the answers to life. There's something else. What is that something else? It is the satisfaction of your soul that only God can bring. What can you do? I'm going to startle you by what I have to say. There is nothing you can do about it. There is no way back to God of your own choosing and your own making. But God has done it for you. God looked over the battlements of heaven and he saw the human race in their sin, in their misery, all their troubles and their suffering. And the Bible says God so loved the world. God so loved. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves the whole world tonight, regardless of your circumstances. Regardless of how far away you've gotten from God, he loves you with an everlasting love. And because God loves you, he decided to do something about it. What could he do? He is the great infinite God, pure holiness. You are a finite man, sinful, unworthy. What can be done? God decided to pay the death and the judgment and the hell that we deserved for our deliberate breaking of his law. God is a just God. Sin had to be paid for. If you break a law of the city of New York, you have to pay for it. If you're caught, and God catches all, as it were. We've sinned, we've broken his laws, we have to pay for it, and the penalty is spiritual death, separation from God. And we're all sinners. Every person here tonight, a sinner, separated from God. What can be done? I was walking along the road one day, and I stepped on an anthill. And I killed a lot of ants and wounded a lot of others and tore their little house up, and I didn't mean to. And I remember stooping down, and I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could become an ant for just a moment and crawl around down there and tell those people that I didn't mean to do that. That I didn't mean to kill them and wound them and tear their little house up. But I couldn't do it. I was too big and they were too little, and I don't understand ant language. That's exactly what God did. The great, mighty, everlasting, infinite God looked down from heaven. He was so big and we were so little. How could the great God communicate with us? So God decided to become a man. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is who Jesus Christ was. He was God. And he came for the express purpose, because he loved, to seek and to save that which was lost. You're lost, separated from God, away from God. He came to bring you back. He came to bring you back to God. He came seeking you, and tonight Jesus is seeking you. And when I see Jesus Christ making the blind to see, I see God. When I see Christ making the deaf to hear, I see God. When I see Christ making the lame to walk, I see God. When I see Christ feeding the poor, I see God. The compassion and the love and the mercy of God to every one of us. But I see something else. I see Jesus Christ hanging on the cross, and I see a spike in each hand and a crown of thorns on his brow and a spear through his side and a spike through his feet. And I hear him in the agony of that cross saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And in that terrible and holy moment, in some mysterious way that no theologian has ever fathomed, I see God taking my sins and laying them on Christ, made to be sin for us who knew no sin, commending his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. I see Christ shedding his blood in my place, taking my place on the cross, taking my judgment and my hell and my suffering on that cross, and dying in my place. You see, the penalty for breaking God's law is death, spiritual and eternal death. But in a mysterious and glorious way, Jesus took it on the cross. Christ died for our sins. That's the reason he came. And that's the reason on every Catholic church and every Protestant church you'll see a cross. The cross is the symbol of Christianity. Why? Because on that cross, Christ died for our sins. Not an accidental death. Our sins nailed him there. Yours and mine. But I'm glad to tell you that he did not stay on a cross. On the third day, he rose again. And tonight, he's a living Christ, living at the right hand of God the Father. And I don't offer you a dead Christ tonight. I don't offer you a Christ whose bones lie in a Syrian grave. I offer you a resurrected, living, victorious Christ tonight, who can change your life and transform you and make you a new person if you come to him. But while Christ was on that cross, one hand he could take the hand of God, the other hand he could take the hand of man, and he reconciled. God was in Christ reconciling the world unto himself. He was breaking the wall down, breaking the barrier down, breaking the chasm down, bridging it, so that now we can come back to God. God has found a ground upon which he can forgive sinful men, and the ground is the cross. And that's the reason God will never meet you anywhere but the cross. That's the reason that if men are to get to heaven, they've got to come to the cross. If there had been any other way to save you, Christ would never have died. If there'd been any other way to save a man from sin and from hell, Jesus Christ would have never died on the cross. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. If it's possible to save men any other way except by me dying on the cross, please find it. But there was no other way. Only one road to heaven, and that's by the way of the cross. And I want to ask you this: have you come by the way of the cross? Have you had this encounter with God at the cross? Have you come to the cross? If you haven't, your sins are not forgiven, and if you died, you would not go to heaven according to the teaching of the book. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. That's what God did. God gave his Son, Jesus Christ. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him, there we come to it. God so loved the world that he gave. He gave. He gave his Son. He gave his Son to die for you. But you must do something. There's something that you yourself must do. I have studied this book for 20 years. And according to the teaching of this book, not my own ideas, this book, there are 3 things that you have to do before you can be forgiven of your sin and before you can get to heaven. The first, Jesus said, except ye repent, ye shall likewise perish. Repentance, what is that? I've heard a lot about repentance. You say, what is it? All right, repentance is this. I recognize that I have broken the law of God. I recognize that I have sinned. I'm ready to acknowledge it. I'm ready to confess it. But that's not all of repentance. It means that I also must renounce my sin. I must be willing to give up my sin. You can't come to Christ with your pride. You have to humble yourself. You can't come to Christ and expect to keep your sins. You must renounce your sin, or at least be willing to. You may not have any power to renounce your sin. You may not have any ability of your own to turn from your sin. You don't have to have any. I don't have any either. Christ gives you the ability. And even in repentance, it is God giving you the ability to turn. In other words, here's what repentance is. I'm going down the road, and I turn around with the help of God, and I start in a new direction. That's repentance. A new attitude. A new mind toward myself, toward God, and toward my fellow man. That's repentance. Has that happened to you? Are you sure that you've repented? I tell you, if I wasn't sure that I had repented of my sins, you couldn't drag me out of Madison Square Garden tonight till I was settled. If I wasn't sure that I had repented of my sins, you couldn't get me. You couldn't get me out of this garden. Because Jesus said, Billy Graham didn't say it, Jesus said it, except ye repent, ye shall likewise perish. The holy, loving, tender Son of God said that. Have you repented? Secondly, you must receive Christ. Have you done that? Oh, you say, Billy, I believe. I believe in Christ, and I believe in God, and I believe in the Bible. Isn't that enough? No, wait a minute. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Whosoever receiveth. Have you received Christ? Has there come a time in your life that you've actually received him? Oh, yes, you believe. Suppose I'm going to give you this book now. I hand you the book, and I say, I want you to have it, and I lay it right there. You say, yes, sir, I believe that Billy Graham is going to give me that book. You go outside and you say, Billy Graham gave me a book. Where is the book? Oh, it's lying up there on the pulpit. Well, didn't you receive it? No, but I believe it. There are many of you that believe. But have you received? I'm asking you to receive tonight. I'm asking you by a step of faith to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Master and Savior. Then the third thing, you must be willing to obey him. You see, the gospel of Christ is vertical, but it's also horizontal. Jesus said, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and strength. But he didn't stop there. That's the vertical relationship. That's the receiving Christ. That's the returning of our love to God. But then he said, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. We must be willing to leave here tonight to live for Christ, to be living testimonies and living witnesses that Christ lives in our hearts. The courtesy, the sweetness, the graciousness, the love, the tenderness, the kindness that we have for people must be manifest in the way we live, so that when we go back to the shop on Monday morning or back to the office, everybody will say, well, what's come over Jim? When I go back home, they'll say, what's come over me? What's changed me? Then I have an opportunity to tell them, Christ changed me. But it means more than that. It means reading your Bible every day, loving his word, because no one can grow except you read the Bible every day. Desire the sincere milk of the word that ye may grow thereby. Secondly, spending time every day in prayer, talking to God in prayer, in fellowship and communion with him. Thirdly, living the life by witnessing, taking our stand for Christ. If we confess with our mouths the Lord Jesus, that's standing up for Christ. No such thing as secret believing. We must acknowledge him, and lastly, getting into the church and getting to work for him, into a church where Christ is preached, and working through the fellowship of the church, helping, growing, strengthening the church. That's what it means. Obedience. Obedience to him. And Jesus said, if you're not willing to deny self and take up the cross and follow him, you can't be his disciple. Lenin once said that a communist is a dead man on furlough. Jesus requires no less. He requires all. We must surrender our total personality, our intelligence, our emotions, our will, our bodies. Everything we have must go when we come to Jesus Christ, and he must become Lord. He must become first. Have you received him? Are you sure that you've repented, that you've received? That is a definite act of the will. That is a definite act of faith. Has it happened to you? You say, well, Billy, how long does it take? That quick? I remember the night I received Christ 23 years ago. The man that led me to Christ is sitting on this platform tonight. 23 years ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, I said yes to Christ. I didn't have any special emotion. In fact, on the way home, I thought to myself, I doubt if it'll last. But the next morning, when I woke up, I knew something was different. I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't tell you all about it. I couldn't give it in theological terminology. But I knew that it had happened. And it can happen to you tonight. Just as simply and wonderfully and quietly and reverently, you can receive Christ. And if you will, I'm going to ask you to do something that we've seen thousands of people do in the last 3 weeks. I'm going to ask you to get up out of your seat all over this place. I'm going to ask you to get up out of your seats and come and stand here as an indication that you're receiving Christ into your heart tonight. If you're with friends or relatives, they'll wait on you. If you've come in a delegation, they'll wait. We ask you to come down here, and we're going to give you a verse of Scripture, have a moment of prayer in the counseling room. We're going to say a word to all of you, give you some literature before you go. But coming forward is for this reason. When Jesus saw the man with the withered arm, Jesus could have healed him by speaking a word, but he didn't do it. Jesus said to this man that had never stretched his arm out, he said, stretch it forth. Now, if you had never stretched in all your life your arm, it would take an act of faith to do it, wouldn't it? He'd tried 1,000,000 times and failed. He'd given up long ago. But Jesus said, stretch it forth, and by faith he did. An act of faith, and he was healed. I'm asking you to stretch your life forth now and give your life to Christ. Now I'm going to ask that every head is bowed. Nobody leaving the stadium. Every eye closed. In prayer. And while our heads are bowed, I'm going to ask the choir to sing softly just as I am. I'm going to ask you to come. You say, well, Billy, do I have to give my life to Christ tonight? Yes. The Bible says now is the accepted time. Today is the day of salvation. You may never have another hour like this. There may never be another moment for you like this. This is your big moment with God. Don't you let distance keep you from coming. I know it's a long way in the balcony. Christ went all the way to the cross in your place. Certainly you can come a few feet and give your life to Him. And up there in those great balconies, you can come down by the escalators. We'll wait. There's plenty of time. And if you're with friends or in a delegation, they're going to wait. We won't keep you long. And I'm going to ask you to come and stand quietly and reverently right here as an indication that by faith you're receiving Christ into your heart. You come right now, quickly, while every head is bowed and the choir is singing softly. From up here and around there and over here, you come right now. And say, tonight, I give my life to Christ. I receive Christ right now. That's it, quickly. Just get up and come right now.